King Tutankhamun. The boy king of Egypt. In the grand and mysterious saga of ancient Egypt, few figures captivate the modern imagination, quite like King Tutankhamun, often referred to simply as King Tut. Born around 1341 BCE, Tutankhamun ascended the throne at the incredibly young age of approximately 9 years old, during one of the most tumultuous periods in Egypt's history. He inherited a kingdom fractured by religious upheaval, brought about by his presumed father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, who had attempted to convert Egypt from its traditional polytheistic belief system to monotheism centered around the sun god, Aten. This radical shift destabilized the priesthood, undermined centuries-old institutions, and left the empire vulnerable to internal dissent and external threats. Tutankhamun's reign, though brief, lasting only about 9 years before his untimely death around age 18, was crucial in restoring Egypt to its former religious traditions. Under the guidance of powerful advisors like Ai and General Horemheb, the young pharaoh reinstated the worship of Amun and began the process of restoring temples and religious monuments desecrated during Akhenaten's revolution. Though his youth and short rule limited his political impact, his symbolic importance was immense. He became a figure of national healing, the youthful face of a return to divine favor. Ironically, Tutankhamun's fame in the modern world owes not to his rule, but to what followed more than 3,000 years later. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered his nearly intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings, a discovery considered the most significant archaeological find of the 20th century. The treasures within, including the famous gold funerary mask, offered an unprecedented glimpse into the wealth, artistry, and burial practices of the New Kingdom period. The mystery surrounding his death, possibly due to illness, injury, or foul play, has only deepened public fascination. Today, King Tut stands as an eternal symbol of Egypt's ancient glory, youth, and the haunting allure of lost civilizations. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin, Queen of England. Few monarchs in world history embody the spirit of national resilience and cultural flourishing as Queen Elizabeth I of England, who reigned from 1558 to 1603. Born in 1533 as the daughter of the controversial King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth's early life was marked by political danger and personal tragedy. After her mother's execution and her own declaration as illegitimate, she navigated a treacherous landscape of court intrigue, religious conflict, and rival claims to the throne. Yet from these unstable beginnings rose one of the most formidable rulers in English history. When Elizabeth ascended the throne at the age of 25, England was beset by internal divisions between Protestants and Catholics, economic struggles, and the lingering threat of foreign domination. With intelligence, charisma, and political savvy, she managed to stabilize her realm. She deftly avoided marriage, though many suitors tried, and instead fashioned herself as the Virgin Queen, married to her people and her country. This cultivated image allowed her to wield power as a single woman in a patriarchal age, without becoming the puppet of a husband or foreign power. Her reign, known as the Elizabethan era, became a golden age of English history. Under her leadership, England defeated the mighty Spanish Armada in 1588, a turning point that established the country as a major naval power and fostered national pride. Elizabeth's patronage of the arts led to the flowering of English Renaissance literature, including the works of William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser. Her court became a center of culture and diplomacy, and her policies encouraged exploration, trade, and colonization, laying early foundations for the British Empire. Elizabeth I died in 1603, ending the Tudor dynasty, but she left behind a legacy of strong centralized monarchy, religious moderation, and cultural vibrancy. She was not just a ruler, but a symbol of enduring strength, intellect, and independence in a world that so often denied such qualities to women. Her life story continues to inspire as a powerful testament to leadership, resilience, and vision in a time of extraordinary challenge. King Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, often referred to as Louis the Great, or the Sun King, reigned over France from 1643 to 1715, a staggering 72 years. the longest of any monarch in European history. Born in 1638 and ascending the throne at the age of 4, Louis's early years were dominated by regents and ministers, most notably Cardinal Mazarin. These formative years were marked by a series of noble uprisings known as the Fronde, which deeply influenced the young king's view on centralized power and the dangers of aristocratic rebellion. Once Mazarin died in 1661, Louis XIV took direct control of the French government, declaring his famous maxim, "L'État, c'est moi," I am the state. This declaration marked the dawn of absolute monarchy in France, where the king wielded unchecked authority. Louis's rule epitomized the divine right of kings, and he carefully crafted an image of majesty, refinement, and invincibility. The heart of this image was the magnificent Palace of Versailles, a lavish symbol of royal power and cultural dominance. By moving the court to Versailles, Louis brought the nobility under his watchful eye, transforming them into loyal courtiers and effectively neutering potential rivals. Louis's reign was also characterized by continuous military campaigns aimed at expanding and defending French borders, including the Franco-Dutch War, the War of the League of Augsburg, and the War of the Spanish Succession. While these wars at times brought glory, they also drained the treasury and burdened the populace with taxes. On the domestic front, Louis centralized administrative control, reformed tax systems, and promoted mercantilism to strengthen the economy. Culturally, his reign saw a flourishing of French art, architecture, theater, and classical music, making France the cultural heart of Europe. However, his revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685, which had granted rights to French Protestants, led to religious persecution and the exile of thousands of Huguenots, a decision that would later haunt France economically and morally. By the time of his death in 1715, France was both a feared superpower and a nation straining under the weight of absolute rule and economic hardship. Nevertheless, Louis XIV's legacy as a ruler who reshaped the monarchy, solidified state power, and left a lasting cultural imprint remains unparalleled in French history. Queen Victoria, the Empress of the British Empire born in 1819, ascended the British throne in 1837 at the age of 18 and reigned until her death in 1901. Her 63-year reign, known as the Victorian era, marked a transformative period in world history, coinciding with the height of the Industrial Revolution, the expansion of the British Empire, and sweeping social, scientific, and political changes. Victoria's rule redefined monarchy in a rapidly changing age and left a legacy that continues to influence British identity. When she became queen, the monarchy was viewed with suspicion and irrelevance, but her personal dignity, moral rectitude, and strict adherence to family values helped restore its reputation. Victoria's marriage to her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, was a source of deep love and support. Albert's influence was profound. He encouraged her to take an interest in arts, science, and public welfare. Together they represented a new image of monarchy, domestic, moral, and middle-class in sensibility, which resonated with a rapidly industrializing and socially evolving Britain. After Albert's untimely death in 1861, Victoria fell into deep mourning and withdrew from public life for many years, earning criticism for her reclusiveness. However, her later resurgence as a national figurehead helped unite the empire in an age of expansion. In 1876, she was declared Empress of India, a symbolic title that underscored Britain's dominance on the global stage. The British Empire during her reign stretched across the globe, with colonies and territories on every continent, inspiring. The phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire." Under her reign, Britain witnessed unparalleled industrial growth. Railways, telegraphs, steamships, and mechanized production transformed society. It was also a time of reform. Labor laws improved, child labor was reduced, and education became more accessible. Simultaneously, the era grappled with stark inequalities, colonial exploitation, and the contradictions of empire. Victoria's name became synonymous with an age of prudence, progress, and imperial pride. By the time of her death, she was not only the matriarch of a vast European royal network, many of her descendants sat on foreign thrones, but also a symbol of continuity in a rapidly changing world. Her death marked the end of an era, but her legacy as a monarch who personified the triumphs and tensions of modernity remains enduring. Genghis Khan, emperor of the Mongol Empire born as Temujin around 1162 on the Mongolian steppes, rose from a life of abandonment, tribal warfare, and extreme hardship to become one of the most feared and respected conquerors in history. Orphaned at a young age after his father was poisoned by rival clans, Temujin lived in exile with his family, often near starvation. These early trials forged in him a ruthless resilience, strategic brilliance, and an unyielding drive for unity and domination. By 1206, after years of building alliances, crushing rivals, and proving his military genius, Temujin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. What followed was a series of unprecedented military campaigns that reshaped the known world. Under his leadership, the Mongol Empire expanded with lightning speed across Asia, the Middle East, and into Eastern Europe. His armies conquered the powerful Khwarezmian Empire, devastated Persia, ravaged northern China, and reached as far as Kiev and Moscow. Genghis Khan revolutionized warfare. He employed superior mobility, complex signaling, psychological warfare, and meritocratic leadership. His commanders were promoted by talent, not birth, and loyalty was rewarded with wealth and status. Yet his legacy is not solely one of bloodshed. Contrary to the barbarian image often associated with him, Genghis Khan established one of the most effective administrative systems in history. He created the Yasa, a unified legal code, enforced religious tolerance across his empire, and established secure trade routes that would later become part of the Silk Road, a precursor to globalization. Under his rule, the Mongol Empire became a melting pot of cultures, science, and commerce, connecting the East and West in ways never before imagined. Even after his death in 1227, his descendants continued to rule over vast territories, founding dynasties such as the Yuan dynasty in China and the Ilkhanate in Persia. Genghis Khan's legacy is paradoxical. He was a destroyer of cities, yet a builder of empires, a feared conqueror, yet a unifier of the known world. His vision of a connected, disciplined, and expansive empire permanently altered the course of history and laid the groundwork for global exchanges in culture, technology, and trade. Catherine the Great, Russia's enlightened despot widely known as Catherine the Great, was born as Sophie Friederike Auguste of Prussia in 1729. She ascended to power not through inheritance, but through an audacious and strategic coup. Married to the unpopular and mentally unstable Tsar Peter III, she seized control in 1762, just months after Peter's ascension, when he was overthrown and later killed. Catherine thus became the longest ruling female leader in Russian history, reigning for 34 years until her death in 1796. Catherine's reign marked the golden age of the Russian Empire. Though she seized the throne through force, her rule was marked by intelligence, diplomacy, and progressive vision. A dedicated student of the Enlightenment, she corresponded with major philosophers like Voltaire, Diderot, and Montesquieu, and embraced many Enlightenment ideas, though often more in theory than in practice. She modernized Russian administration, reformed the legal code, and sought to bring reason and science into governance. Catherine expanded Russia's territory significantly through military campaigns and shrewd diplomacy. Under her leadership, Russia defeated the Ottoman Empire and annexed Crimea, expanded into Poland during its partitions, and extended control deeper into the Caucasus and Central Asia. These expansions transformed Russia into a true Eurasian superpower. Culturally, she was a patron of the arts, literature, and education. She founded the Smolny Institute, the first educational institution for women in Russia, and helped modernize Russian society by importing Western European culture and Enlightenment values. She also modernized the economy, encouraged scientific research, and oversaw major infrastructure projects. However, her reign was not without contradictions. Despite her intellectual embrace of liberty and justice, Catherine maintained an autocratic rule and suppressed several revolts, most notably the Pugachev Rebellion in 1773-74, which arose from peasant dissatisfaction and Cossack resistance. While she initially considered abolishing serfdom, she ultimately reinforced it. binding millions of Russians in a system of hereditary bondage that would persist until the 19th century. Catherine the Great remains one of history's most fascinating rulers, an outsider who mastered Russian politics, a woman who ruled like a man in an age of male dominance, and a monarch who balanced despotism with intellectual ambition. Her legacy endures in Russia's political traditions, territorial structure, and cultural identity. Emperor Akbar the Great, the architect of Mughal India born in 1542, was the third ruler of the Mughal Empire and is widely celebrated as one of the most visionary and inclusive monarchs in Indian history. He ascended the throne in 1556 at the age of just 13 after the sudden death of his father, Humayun. Despite his youth, Akbar quickly proved himself to be an extraordinary military leader, strategist, and administrator. Over a reign of nearly 5 decades, he expanded the Mughal Empire into a vast territory covering most of the Indian subcontinent, from Afghanistan in the west to Bengal in the east, and from the Himalayas in the north to the Deccan Plateau in the south. Akbar's military successes were formidable, but his true genius lay in governance. In an age of rigid religious boundaries, Akbar practiced religious tolerance and actively sought to bridge divides between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, and Christians. He abolished the jizya, a tax on non-Muslims, married Rajput princesses, and encouraged interfaith dialogue. His court at Fatehpur Sikri became a center of philosophical and theological debate, where scholars of various faiths engaged in discussions of ethics and metaphysics. Akbar also introduced revolutionary administrative reforms. He implemented a centralized bureaucracy, developed a fair taxation system based on land productivity, the ZBT system, and emphasized merit-based promotions. These reforms not only stabilized the empire, but also fostered loyalty among diverse subjects. Culturally, Akbar's reign was a golden age. He supported the arts, architecture, literature, and miniature painting, blending Persian and Indian styles, to create a unique Mughal aesthetic. He commissioned the construction of architectural marvels like the Buland Darwaza, Agra Fort, and Humayun's tomb. Despite being illiterate, Akbar was intellectually curious and surrounded himself with scholars, poets, historians, and thinkers. His vision of Sulh-e-Kul, peace with all, became the ideological foundation for a pluralistic and secular Indian state, centuries ahead of its time. Akbar died in 1605, leaving behind a strong, prosperous empire that would continue to flourish under his descendants. His legacy is not merely in conquest, but in creating a model of inclusive governance that resonates in Indian history and identity to this day. Queen Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt born in 69 BCE, was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, a lineage of Macedonian Greek origin established after the death of Alexander the Great. Fluent in several languages and highly educated in philosophy, politics, and astronomy, Cleopatra was an exceptionally intelligent and ambitious monarch who ruled during one of the most volatile periods in ancient Mediterranean history. Cleopatra came to the throne at just 18 years old, initially co-ruling with her younger brother, Ptolemy the Thegned, whom she would later overthrow in a bitter civil war. From the start, her reign was marked by political intrigue and shifting alliances. Understanding the rising power of Rome, Cleopatra aligned herself with its most powerful men, not only for personal security, but to safeguard Egypt's independence. Her first major Roman alliance was with Julius Caesar, whom she famously seduced, and with whom she bore a son, Caesarion. Cleopatra's entrance into Roman politics via Caesar was bold and controversial, and after his assassination in 44 BCE, she aligned with Mark Antony, Caesar's general and political heir. Their partnership, both romantic and strategic, was the stuff of legend. Together, they sought to counter the rising dominance of Octavian, later Augustus Caesar, Caesar's adopted son, Cleopatra, and Antony's defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE marked the end of both their power and Egypt's independence. After retreating to Alexandria and seeing their forces collapse, both Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide, Antony by falling on his sword, and Cleopatra, as legend has it, by allowing a venomous asp to bite her. Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE signified the fall of the Ptolemaic kingdom and the absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire. More than just a seductress, Cleopatra was a skilled linguist, economist, naval commander, and diplomat. She ruled during a time when powerful women were rare and often scorned, yet she held her own against the mightiest empire of her age. Her enduring legacy lies not just in her tragic romance or dramatic end, but in her fierce resistance to foreign domination, her political acumen, and her role as the last true pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Cleopatra remains an icon of power, beauty, and resilience, whose story continues to captivate the world even after 2 millennia. Emperor Meiji, the modernizer of Japan, born in 1852 as Mutsuhito, was the 122nd emperor of Japan and reigned from 1867 to 1912. His era, known as the Meiji era, marked one of the most profound transformations in any nation's history. When Meiji ascended the throne, Japan was a feudal society dominated by powerful shoguns, isolated from much of the world under its long-standing sakoku, closed country policy. But under Meiji's leadership, Japan broke from centuries of isolation and leapt into modernity with astonishing speed. The spark for this change came with the arrival of Commodore Matthew Perry from the United States in 1853, forcing Japan to open its ports. This crisis undermined the authority of the Tokugawa shogunate and led to the Meiji Restoration of 1868, during which real power was restored to the emperor. Though in practice, he ruled alongside a group of visionary statesmen. Known as the Genro, Emperor Meiji presided over a revolution that touched every aspect of Japanese life. Feudal domains were abolished and replaced with prefectures governed centrally. The samurai class was dissolved, and a national army based on conscription was formed. The government introduced universal education, built railways, telegraph lines, and factories, and encouraged industrialization. Japan adopted Western legal codes, banking systems, and military techniques, modeling institutions on those of France, Germany, and Britain. One of the most symbolic changes was the adoption of Western dress and customs by the imperial court, a stark contrast to traditional Japanese norms. Yet Meiji's Japan didn't blindly imitate the West. Instead, it blended modernization with national pride and identity, captured in the motto, Fukoku Kyohei, enrich the country, strengthen the military. Under Meiji, Japan emerged as a powerful modern state. Its victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894-95, and the Russo-Japanese War, 1904-05, shocked the world and announced Japan's arrival as a global power, the first Asian nation to defeat a European one in modern warfare. These triumphs also emboldened Japan's imperial ambitions, setting the stage for its 20th century expansion. Emperor Meiji died in 1912, having seen Japan transformed from a medieval backwater into a constitutional monarchy with a dynamic economy and a strong international presence. His legacy endures in modern Japan's foundations: economic strength, national unity, and technological prowess, all rooted in the Meiji era's revolutionary spirit. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen of England, born in 1533, was the daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and she reigned from 1558 until her death in 1603. Her rule, known as the Elizabethan era, is often regarded as a golden age in English history, a time of flourishing arts, naval triumphs, and the solidification of national identity. Elizabeth came to the throne in a nation divided by religious turmoil. Her father's break from the Catholic Church, followed by the violent swings between Protestantism under Edward VI and Catholicism under Mary the Rye, had left England fractured and uncertain. Elizabeth, a Protestant herself, adopted a pragmatic and moderate religious policy known as the Elizabethan religious settlement, which aimed to unite the country and avoid further sectarian bloodshed. Politically astute and fiercely independent, Elizabeth ruled with a shrewd balance of charisma, diplomacy, and calculation. Refusing to marry, she became known as the Virgin Queen, declaring she was married to England. Her unmarried status became a powerful symbol of her autonomy and helped avoid foreign entanglements, although it fueled constant speculation and pressure. Elizabeth's reign saw the rise of some of the greatest figures in English literature and drama, including William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser. The arts blossomed under her patronage, and England's cultural prestige soared. Her leadership was also tested on the battlefield. The most defining moment of her reign came in 1588, with the defeat of the Spanish Armada. Against overwhelming odds, the English navy triumphed over the fleet sent by King Philip II of Spain, a Catholic monarch bent on conquering Protestant England. The victory elevated Elizabeth's status to near mythical heights and marked England's emergence as a formidable naval power. Elizabeth also navigated complex challenges from rival claimants to the throne, most notably Mary, Queen of Scots, whose execution in 1587 ended a long and dangerous Catholic threat. Despite plots and political intrigues, Elizabeth maintained control, supported economic expansion, and encouraged overseas exploration, including the early voyages of Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh, laying the groundwork for the British Empire. When Elizabeth died in 1603, she left behind a stable and confident nation. Her death ended the Tudor dynasty, but her reign had permanently reshaped the English monarchy. She became a symbol of national pride, feminine strength, and enlightened rule, earning the enduring title Gloriana.